Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Lianas Senior Transition Support, specialists in home care and senior residences.
Matt Delvecchio here, specializing in home care, downsizing, and the senior living industry. Thank you for tuning in. Coming up on the first half of the show, it's National Volunteer Week, and we're going to be celebrating volunteers while shedding some light on organizations that rely on volunteers, as well as a discussion on the many benefits of volunteering. And on the second half of the show, are you, your spouse, or your child dealing with health-related issues? Are you in a caregiver role? Well, did you know that you may be eligible for tax credits both provincially and federally? You may be leaving money on the table. We're going to hear how to obtain these tax credits, and we're also going to hear about the latest trends in the senior living industry. Should you age in place? Or is it time to make the move? And what's the difference between public and private options? That's all going to be coming up on the second half. I hope you're enjoying your Sunday. Again, thank you for tuning in and joining me. Now, listen, before we get started, I'd like to pay my respects to Eddie Nolan, who recently succumbed to throat and neck cancer. If you caught the Montreal Gazette yesterday, you probably saw a wonderful tribute to Eddie Nolan, longtime supporter of the Terry Fox run. In fact, he participated in 43 of them. He was a beloved caretaker at the English Montreal School Board, and he fought throat and neck cancer since 2011, far beyond what was supposed to be predicted by doctors. And I had Eddie Nolan on my show a year ago, in fact, and here's a short clip of my interview when he was talking about the Terry Fox run.
For the past, I was inspired like every other Canadian across the country. Unfortunately, I didn't know Terry was coming into Montreal, and neither did many people know about it at the time he hit Montreal. I think it was back in June of 1980. And like I said, I was training for the Montreal Marathon myself, and Terry was my inspiration. The minute I saw him and they said he was running a marathon a day, I doubted everything. But I followed his story, and what most moved me about his story was his reasons for doing what he was doing. It was about children in the cancer ward. And once I found that out, and, I followed his story right up till the day he passed away. And in 1981, we had the very first Terry Fox run up in Beaver Lake on Mount Royal.
That's Terry Nolan, who passed away last week at the age of 67. His request for medical assistance in dying came through and passed away last week. What a man. Sending sincere condolences to Eddie's family and friends. All right. Now, did you know April 14th, that's today, is the start of National Volunteer Week? This week, let us all take the time to thank and recognize the countless individuals who selflessly give their time and energy to make a difference in their communities. And I want to hear from you. If you volunteer, tell us who you volunteer for and why you're doing it. Call me at 514-790-0800 or text me in the organization that you're volunteering for at 514-800. Let's get a shout out for the many organizations relying on volunteers. I'm going to give you that number again. If you want to call in, it's 514-790-0800 or text me at 514-800. Let's celebrate the volunteers during National Volunteer Week. Now, joining me today is the Executive Director of Volunteer West Island, Lynda Barrett. She's going to share some insights into volunteering. And Lynda, I want to welcome you to Life Unrehearsed.
Oh, thank you very much, Matt. So nice to be here.
Well, thank you for joining me. So glad we're able to get the word out for volunteers. And if there's someone that knows a thing or two about volunteers, it's yourself. So thank you very much for taking a little time on a big day, the start of National Volunteer Week. First of all, tell us about your role at Volunteer West Island.
Well, sure thing. I can probably, the best way I can explain it is that we're there to make volunteering contagious. So I think that says it all. And we're not the only center. There's probably about 7 volunteer centers on the island of Montreal. And definitely that's our purpose, but I don't do it by myself. I've got a super team. I've got great people that are willing to guide anyone that wants to get involved, and we'll send them towards all the opportunities that we know. And, you had talked about several non-for-profits and different groups with a cause, but there's about 231 on the West Island that we're referring volunteers to, Matt.
Unbelievable. That's just in the West Island. And you know what? The texts already are coming in, Lynda. Let's get a couple out there. And again, text us in your organization that you're volunteering for, and we want to get a shout out to them. Or even call me at 514-790-0800 if you want to tell us about who you're volunteering for and why you're doing it. We've got a big shout out for Cummings Center for the volunteers there. And, of course, and this is actually where my daughter volunteered, Moisson Montréal. I know they have a ton of volunteers. Great, great cause, supplying food to many, many organizations. So, Lynda, how many volunteers are involved? And then we're just talking now with Volunteer West Island.
Geez, I wish I had enough manpower to do the actual count across the West Island, so it's hard to kind of, keep track of that. But I can tell you, just us last year, we recruited and sent to non-for-profits 2,050 volunteers, which is pretty good because ever since COVID, there's been obviously, and everybody understands why, a decrease in the amount of volunteering, people that are willing to give their time, but it's really starting to change. We're seeing something very encouraging, and we're so pleased about it. So that's about it, Matt, about 2,050 volunteers, but if I think about just the way in which our economic sector works, there's the private industry, as you know, the public and the parapublic, and then there's the non-for-profits. And if you think those last two sectors of our economy is pretty much, volunteers are part of that whole process, and they're the ones that make our community that much better. So, that's it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the fact, and it must be a challenge since the pandemic. You brought up a very important point, and I've had guests on the show that also require volunteers. And let's face it, the pandemic has kind of put the brakes for some people when it comes to volunteering. Usually it's older adults volunteering, and there still may be some people hesitating. I'm glad to hear that you're seeing sort of a turnaround, but it's still an issue, isn't it?
Oh, for sure it's an issue. And I think that the best thing you can do is that, communication is the best tool. So if you can provide an opportunity that is completely clear for the volunteer, they know what their job description is, they know what their responsibilities are, then after it just gives a little bit more of a safety net for the person to feel more comfortable in their role. So definitely.
Listening to Life Unrehearsed, Matt Delvecchio here. I'm talking with Executive Director of Volunteer West Island, Lynda Barrett, about the role of volunteers ahead of National Volunteer Week that gets underway starting today. All right, Lynda, what would you say makes for a good volunteer?
What makes for a good volunteer? Oh, that's a big, big question. One of the things that I can honestly say, Matt, is that over the years I've met all kinds of individuals, whether they give 2 hours per month, whether they give an hour, every couple of months, or they just help out at special events. I think it all has to do with their passion. If somebody is willing to help out at a board level, whether it's to do any type of online volunteering, which has changed, as we know, with the Zoom and Teams and everything, there's so many different opportunities that someone could take part in. So I think passion is number one. I think reliability. Volunteers are so important for non-for-profits, and non-for-profits depend on them so much. And we wouldn't be able, if you think ground level, and I just want to bring us back to the pandemic, but the first thing that François Legault mentioned was, please help our seniors, the ones that are at home, and go to jebénévole.ca. And that's our federation, and there's 115 of us across Quebec. And, it just goes to show ground level, the food banks, volunteering, everybody during that period of time, there was about maybe 20 non-for-profits on the West Island that were still open. They were still serving the community. So that's how important they are to the fabric of our community.
I'm glad you mentioned Je Bénévole, but the texts are still coming in here. It's so nice. We're going to get some shout outs. Again, text in 514-800 for any organizations. A text came in from Adam just now, Lynda. Is there an equivalent of Volunteer West Island for the city of Montreal? I'm closer to downtown and would love to give some time.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you, Adam. And definitely there's the Montreal Volunteer Bureau that exists and it's actually the first bureau in Canada that was created. So it just gives you an idea. We have 115 across Quebec, so that was the first one. And so definitely Adam can go there. There's also Montreal North, there's Montreal East, there's Bordeaux Quartier-Ville, there's one in Saint Laurent. So really each volunteer center serves a jurisdiction. So ours, for instance, we serve from the borough of Lachine right up to Senneville. That's our geographical work.
Area, and got it. And glad you also mentioned jebénévole.ca, and that's a great website where you can also go to. Lynda, we already have to head out to traffic. I'm going to give these numbers out again. Thank you for the text. Another text came in for Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Just love that organization, and they're always looking for volunteers. Matt Delvecchio here, and I'm talking with Executive Director of Volunteer West Island, Lynda Barrett, about the role of volunteers ahead of National Volunteer Week, which kicks off today for the week. Just a reminder, text in any organization that you've volunteered for, want to get a shout out for. We'll get their names out, or you can call me at 514-790-0800. Who you're volunteering for and why you're doing it. We've got some people on the line already. One of those texts that came in, I was so happy to see it, was for Nova West Island. In fact, I'm on the board of directors for Nova West Island, and tomorrow we have our volunteer recognition event for the hundreds of volunteers for Nova West Island and the thrift shops for Nova as well. Lynda, we're going to bring you back in here, and I'd love to hear from your point of view. What advice would you give to someone considering volunteering for the first time?
Volunteering for the first time. Well, the first thing is, I think the most important is just if you have enough passion and you want to know a little bit about maybe what you could get involved in, that's one of the reasons why there's volunteer centers in our community. We're the open door. So we can actually sit down with a person, we can listen to their needs, their likes, their dislikes, what motivates them. Because, as you know, Matt, everybody volunteers for a different reason. It could be like for, you just mentioned Nova, it's for a cause. It could be just to socialize. It could be for the mere pleasure. Everybody kind of volunteers for a different reason. And like just even on Friday, we had this beautiful event where we have a volunteer challenge in all the high schools of the West Island. And these kids were spectacular. They did some incredible work, and it was worthwhile celebrating because they're our future. So definitely, I think the thing I would say is pick up the phone, go online, anything that you feel that you can contribute. You determine the hours you want to give, when you can give it, and then we'll try to match and find that perfect place for you that will benefit from your skills and your interests.
Love it. Just love it. All right, Lynda, we're going to head to the phone lines here, and we've got Axel on the line. Axel, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Axel.
Yeah.
Tell us your volunteering story.
Well, actually, I'm the president of the Point Claire Rifle Club, and it's made up totally of volunteers. No one received a salary, and the target shooting club has been in existence since 1961.
Wow.
And we're located at a real cool address, 115 Gun Avenue in Point Claire.
I love it.
You can't get better than that. And, I really want to be thankful to you for talking about this and giving me the chance to say thank you to the 20 range officers that we have that come constantly and make sure everyone has a very good time doing target shooting safely. And we teach an awful lot of people who say to us, I didn't know you were in the West Island. And, we have Olympic equipment that people get to use, and all that's been put together by everyone chipping in, helping out and making it work and making sure that everybody is safe.
I love
thing.
it. Axel,
That's great.
that is really great, isn't it, Lynda? Well, thank you, Axel, for calling in and getting the word out for the Point Claire Rifle Club. Really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right. Love it. That's exactly what it's about, Lynda. So,
Yes.
he talked about the benefits of volunteering. Can you expand on that, please?
The benefits of volunteering? Well, I think, again, it just goes back to it's probably the best feel-good activity you can get involved in. That's the basics of volunteering. You're giving your time. You can choose where you want to go. You can choose how often you want to do it. And you can decide, do you want to share your skills? Do you want to work for a specific cause because it touched you greatly? You want to work with animals because you don't have a dog anymore and you just want to get involved. And just like Axel said, helping out even for any type of leisure pursuit within your community. We have a few volunteers that help out with it's the computer techno squad, I believe it is, in Beaconsfield. And they'll help seniors, at any point if they need specialized support with their computers. So it's amazing. And actually, it's a privilege, honestly, Matt, to work for an organization where you always feel good about what you're doing. And it's work sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's just at the end of the day, the impact is right there. You see what your work can do by connecting people and organizations that are desperately in need. And I don't know if a lot of people know, but there's actually 8,000 non-for-profits in Quebec. So, when I talked about the private, public, parapublic, and the non-for-profit, you think about, again, all the emergencies, maybe floods in the past that we had. There's two different types of volunteering. There's formal, which is what we do to safeguard the client and the recipient of your work. But there's also informal, where you just want to go and help your community, put out sandbags, whatever. So we can direct you to do whatever that you feel will benefit, or any which way that you feel you want to give back. And the benefits are too long to even start talking about.
But certainly, like you say, they are. And I hear so many stories from volunteers I didn't know I would get. I'm getting more of it for me than for those that I'm helping for, Listening to Life Unrehearsed, Matt Delvecchio here, and I'm talking with Executive Director of Volunteer West Island, Lynda Barrett, about the role of volunteers ahead of National Volunteer Week that kicks off today. Lynda, can you share a memorable story or an example of a volunteer whose dedication really did have a significant impact on the community?
Sure. Obviously, because we also have our own services and groups of volunteers that do an incredible work. So I can talk about all the Meals on Wheels and the frozen meals, but I want to talk about actually Caring Paws Animal Therapy. That's a group of really dedicated individuals. There are about maybe 35 volunteers. And these incredible people will go and visit lonely seniors. They're going to go and read to children that have autism. They even go to John Abbott, believe it or not, to calm the students during exam period. Now, I'm sure a lot of people would have never thought that is a situation. But, one of the things we're dealing with is higher sense of anxiety. People are a little bit more not at ease, I guess, with structures or whatnot. So I think the story is basically an autistic child coming to a library, and it's the pause program that these volunteers do. They bring their dog, and rest assured, there's quite a few of these wonderful children that wouldn't read and couldn't read, but because a dog was by their side and because they felt comfortable, they produced and they were able to pick up reading from that point on. So that's just one story. The other one I wanted to tell you about, because that one really got to me recently, is a frozen meal driver went out in that wonderful storm we had a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And that's what they do. Meals on Wheels and all the frozen meals, they go out, rain or shine, doesn't matter, because the purpose is to bring a smile to the person that's receiving a meal. And that volunteer got into a situation and was very needed our help. And certainly we went, and at the same time, another volunteer pulled up to the task and took all the frozen meals from her car to go and do the deliveries in her place while we comforted her because of the situation. So volunteers are spectacular. It ceases to amaze me, Matt. And there's too many stories to tell. And I'm sure you see some at Nova, and you got phone calls from Cummings and Big Brothers, but really there's almost too many to even talk about.
Spectacular indeed. We can go on, and I can't get to the text and the phone calls. Unfortunately, we have to head out. Couple quick real text. Girl Guides, Yellow Door, and Agence Omets are there. They all texted in, and so great organizations. Lynda, we're already out of time. How can people find out a little bit more about your organization, Volunteer West Island?
Easy enough. They can call us 514-457-5445. They can go on the website. It's www.cabvwi.org, or just go on any search engine and just plug in Volunteer West Island and you'll find us. And so it's as easy as that. And we're people. That's the community, or people. So we're always open to trying to do better and trying to support anyone that has a concern or has a choice or a plan of what they'd like to do. We're there to help them.
Wonderful. Well, Lynda, thank you very much for spreading the good word. And to all the volunteers on National Volunteer Week, we thank you very much. And you know what? There's still lots of volunteers required out there. So if you're thinking about it, now would be a great time. Thank you very much, Lynda.
Agreed. And thanks to all the volunteers. Thank you, Matt.
All right. Thank you. It's Lynda Barrett, Executive Director of Volunteer West Island.